LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 4 minutes after 11 and you are listening to LBC 97.3. You can watch it as well for once. We've activated the cameras. It means that some very bright lights have come on in the studio, and if you go to lbc.co.uk you can see you can see my guests in full glorious HD Technicolor, and my guests are, we need to establish immediately, on one level Alan and Mary, who are visiting Britain from Australia, and on another level Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Alan, how do I address you? How do you prefer to be?
Everybody usually calls me AJ.
AJ.
Yeah.
And you spent, 30-odd years being merely AJ before realising that you were someone else as well? Yeah,
it's sort of not like that. I've had memories all my life of who I was, but I just tried to shut them down and close them down. But in time, after I reached around 40, I had to accept them completely, so that took me a bit of time.
What do you mean by memories?
Well, I have memories of my entire 2,000 years of experience, so they're memories of what happened in the first century in a lot of detail, and also memories of all the things that happened to me, or most of the things that happened to me through the spirit world. So
what we would traditionally call heaven?
Yes, what you'd call heaven.
So you've got memories of being on earth as Jesus of Nazareth, and then nearly 2,000 years of memories of being in heaven as the Son of God.
Well, everyone's the Son of God, so I'm not.
Jesus is kind of special, though.
Oh, I don't think I'm special, but I know other people have a tendency to think I am.
Okay. You were raised a Jehovah's Witness, weren't you?
I was raised an Anglican first, and then when I was 7 years of age, my parents, my mother first, and then my father became Jehovah's Witnesses.
Which is quite we would use the phrase fire and brimstone religious tradition. It's quite old school. How do you know that what you think are memories weren't sort of just imbued in childhood? And I was raised a Catholic, and I've got some fairly grisly memories of stuff the monks said to me and told me. And when I was little, I believed that the tabernacle at the back of the church was a portal to the next dimension. No, I really did. It was a portal to the next dimension. How do you distinguish between false memories and real memories?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't agree that Jehovah's Witness faith is a fire and brimstone faith. But secondly, when it comes to my memories, they're very, very different to what the Bible states are the truth about my life. So, and also I have a lot more detail. I have all the detail of the missing years of my life that are missing in the Bible.
For example?
Well, I remember every time from around about 2 years of age in the first century onwards. So I can basically relate.
So where were you during the missing years in the Bible?
Well, in the first, from 2 to 12, I was in Egypt, and then
you weren't working in a carpentry workshop with your earthly father.
I was after I was 13 years of age when we moved to Nazareth. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
only until I was around 21 years of age when I left home.
Who was the first person you told you were Jesus?
It was my two sons, my sons Tristan and Caleb.
How did they take it?
Yeah, they took it pretty well. They weren't judgmental. They thought they'd just take a wait-and-see attitude.
How old were they when you dropped this bombshell?
My eldest was 18 and my youngest was 16.
And your mum was worried, wasn't she, when you first revealed?
Yes, she was worried. So she was worried that, I don't know, might hurt myself or something like that, she thought. Obviously, she wanted to
she got doctors involved, is that right?
Well, she did, but I didn't know until 9 months later.
So they were trying to sort of assess you from a distance?
Sort of, yeah.
Kind of Jesus you'd expect to know that, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know everything, no. It is a common fallacy that I know everything, but I don't. I'm just a human just like you are, so I don't know everything.
Fair enough. Mary, I don't have the problem with you, of course, of having to ask how to address you, because you were born in this era, Mary Luck, but you believe that you are Mary of Magdala, the reincarnation of Jesus's sort of close friend, and even more so according to your memories.
Yes. Yeah, I have memories of being Jesus's wife. Well, I not only have the memories, I know that that's who I am, that I'm Mary Magdalene, and very similar to what AJ's described. I have memories of a full life in the first century and then a life lived in the spirit world where we were still husband and wife. And then this 35 or so years I've been on earth again.
And how did you hook up this time around then? Did you have these memories before you met AJ, or you were just sort of two people who can remember 2,000 years of human history operating in complete isolation, and coincidence brought you together, or maybe, I don't know, divine intervention?
Yeah, well, it's not quite. It's quite kind of a long story.
You're both Australian, are you?
We are both
Well, there's
Australian.
a coincidence for a start.
You'd think, though, if we had a bit of a plan, we would have planned to, come back to the same continent at least, wouldn't you?
I guess so, although being able to walk on water would at least increase your transport opportunities. So how did you first meet each other?
Look, we met in my parents' living room. AJ was giving a talk there, just to a group of about 20 or so people, and I'd just been living overseas, and I came home, and this weekend there he was, speaking about some truths about God and about the human soul, and I was quite intrigued by what he was saying. I wouldn't say I was particularly attracted to him at that time, because meeting him actually brought up a lot of things that I'd been trying to suppress for a lot of years. So I'd had some memories before we met, but I didn't understand what they were, and I certainly didn't think, oh, these all mean I'm Mary Magdalene. I didn't actually believe in reincarnation. I don't think AJ did either.
No.
So what convinced you that you were the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene? What was the sort of tipping point, as it were?
Well, I don't know that it has happened in a flash of miraculous understanding, James. It's actually, I actually found it quite, confusing psychologically, as I think you would expect. So I'd had some experiences before I met AJ, and meeting him was sort of a catalyst for me to look at myself more seriously and more sincerely, and what my actual experiences had been. Certainly, I couldn't accept that he was Jesus until I'd gone on my own personal journey of self-discovery and decided who I was, and if I believed these things were true. In the first year after we met, we actually didn't spend that much time together, because I was quite confronted, and I felt that I needed to sort of sort out what was happening for me emotionally at the time.
And your parents are, what, followers? I don't know what the right noun would be of
yeah, we
AJ.
don't consider that we have followers, actually.
But why was AJ in your parents' living room?
They were just interested in, at that time, they were quite interested in what he had to say.
More than quite interested. I'm quite interested in what you have to say. I wouldn't necessarily invite you into my living room.
Oh, okay.
Well, until I know you a little better. I'm just trying to work out whether they'd attended meetings or
No, I was...
You're not a door-to-door messiah, are you, AJ? No, you waited for an invitation, presumably.
Always.
Yes.
Always.
So your parents were already intrigued?
Yes. I don't know if they would say they were intrigued.
What word do you think they would use?
That they were mildly interested. They've been involved in exploring spirituality for all of my life, and they'd, I understand, seen AJ speak at someone else's home, and they have a large area in their home where people can come and sit, and AJ had been there, I think, a few times over the previous year.
Four times.
Okay.
In quite a relaxed Australian way,
Yes.
as we Australians are, quite laid back.
Indeed.
And yeah.
What do they feel about your relationship? Are they happy for you both, your parents?
No, I wouldn't say that they're happy at all.
Right.
Because when we met, I went through a lot of personal changes. I decided that actually I did want to have a relationship with God, and actually I did remember that I am Mary Magdalene. This challenged them greatly.
Yes.
As, I don't know if you're a parent.
I am.
Yes.
But I just have sort of, I don't think my little girls are reincarnations of, I mean, it's a big thing for any parent to accept.
Yeah, and so I understand that. I think it's a very big thing for any parent. Sadly, my parents decided, they made some choices that weren't very kind. They decided
they don't
that
believe you, presumably.
they don't,
No.
and I'm fine with that. And
Yes.
I said that to them from the outset. Like, I have no expectation for them to share my beliefs or to think that I'm Mary Magdalene or AJ's Jesus. But they felt so very frightened and threatened that they actually became quite angry. They tried to control me back into living the life that they could be proud of. They were quite verbally abusive to myself and to AJ on a number of occasions. And at that point, I decided guys, I love you, but I can't really have you in my life if you're going to treat me like this. So I haven't actually had my parents in my life for a few years now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was very sad
Do you
for
feel
me.
responsible for that, AJ?
No, I don't actually. I tried to encourage them to have a bit more open-mindedness at the time, but unfortunately they were so abusive to myself as well that they wouldn't listen to anything that had to be said.
And did you recognise Mary as Mary Magdalene the first time you saw her? Or
Yes, I did.
Did you tell her that's who she was?
No.
Right.
No, it was eventually her parents that told her, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Told her that you were, or told you that he thought you were?
They told me that AJ felt that I was his soulmate.
Right.
Yes.
Have you had soulmates before, AJ?
No.
No, but you've got children.
Yes.
It's 14 minutes after 11. You're listening to LBC 97.3, joined by Mary Luck and AJ Miller, right? That's how I should describe you. But you do believe that you are the reincarnated forms of Jesus Christ and Mary of Magdala.
I wouldn't describe it as reincarnation.
What would you
no.
describe it as?
Well, it's not the same as any kind of reincarnation that a Buddhist would describe or anything like that. It's basically a connection of a soul that's in a unified state, in a dimension in the spirit world, connecting to two bodies that have been created by new parents, my mother and father in this life.
So it's like almost a waiting room for souls, and then the corporeal presence will be inhabited by the soul. You could have been anybody. The soul could have popped up in anybody.
Yes,
in other words.
although in our case we chose to be in a certain location, so that's not normal in the first incarnation.
Meaning Australia.
Meaning Australia
Queensland.
In our case, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's not where I was born. I was born in South Australia.
Right. So you sort of exercise some sort of spiritual sat-nav almost.
Well, you've got control over a lot of things when you're in that condition in the spirit world, far more things than what most people realise here on Earth. So,
speaking of people here on Earth, a lot of them would be, I imagine, keen to talk to you. Can we start taking some calls after the travel news? It sounds so prosaic, doesn't it, in the circumstances? You're listening to LBC 97.3. If you'd like to put anything to AJ or Mary or both or even me, 0845 6060 973 is the number to call. The time now is 11:16. Andy McCall is in the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre.
Big problems now, James, on the trains. First Capital Connect and East Midlands have delays up to an hour between St Pancras and Bedford. The emergency service is on the line at Flitwick. For the tubes, there's no Bakerloo line service again. Stonebridge Park to Harrow and Wilston and Regent's Park Station shut. Once again, problems with the lifts there. The M25 queues anti-clockwise 26-25. That's Waltham Abbey round to the A10. Lane 3 is closed just before the Homestead Tunnel with an accident there. And queues around at Haringey on Green Lanes. The roadworks at Hermitage Road, and that's affecting Seven Sisters Road back to Blackstock Road. Hadley Wood and queues to watch out for on the A111 Cockfosters Road in both directions. At worst, actually coming into town with roadworks just by Ferny Hill. The breakdown of the North Circular northbound at Ilford, so you can see on the cameras that's now been cleared. M25 delays clockwise through Junction 5 at Sevenoaks after breakdown the roadworks earlier on. And for Victoria, still the issues with Buckingham Palace Road. That remains closed between Bressenden Place and Victoria Street with the works undergoing there. Keep another moving. Your next travel update is in half an hour.
This is LBC 97.3.
Day trips to Bruges from only £37. Great deals on mystery tours in Europe and the UK. 10-day escapes to France, Italy and the Black Forest. You can do it all in luxurious comfort at incredibly affordable prices with Buzzline's luxury coach holidays. Book online now and save even more with our online discounts. See buzzlinestravel.co.uk.
Buzzlines in the Discovery Lane.
Hi, I'm Chris Hughes. I sold my company for a pretty decent sum, but low interest rates and inflation gradually eroded my capital.
Chris contacted buytoletcars.com.
It's a simple idea. Buy a car from them and then they just lease it out for you. I now own a fleet of cars, get an average return of 11% per year. The assets give me security and peace of mind. And I've got to say the monthly income is very handy indeed.
For an average 8 to 11% annual return, see buytoletcars.com or call 0800 014 9228.
Royal Greenwich Riverside Apartments and Penthouses at Galliard prices with a new on-site Waitrose. Visit newcapitalkey.com.
Oh, hi Janet.
Hi, Dave.
I just wanted to say, mind that box of documents by the door.
Old documents cluttering up your offices? The Document Warehouse has really clever systems to simplify document storage and retrieval, saving you time, space and your shins on your site or off-site, working together as one. Take a look. thedocumentwarehouse.co.uk.
LBC 97.3. This is London's biggest conversation with James O'Brien.
18 minutes after 11, you're listening to LBC 97.3. And I'm joined in the studio by AJ Miller, an Australian man who, around the age of 40, came to accept and to believe that he is... Well, you don't like the word reincarnation, Alan. I understand why. You are inhabited by the soul of Jesus Christ. Is that how do you put it?
Well, yeah, the bodies are not really inhabited. They are absorbed by, if you like, the soul.
Right.
So the bodies are just sort of like a robotic expression of the soul, if you could think of it that way.
I think I can, sort of. But you don't... so in terms of you are Jesus, that's an uncontroversial statement to you.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, but you are reincarnated. That is semantically troubling.
Yeah, because the average person's belief on the planet about reincarnation is probably the Buddhist style of belief or the New Age style of belief, which we can't agree with.
Yes. Let's take some calls, if that's all right with you. We'll begin, I think, with Jay in Sidcup. Jay, what would you like to say?
Good morning, guys. I find this a very interesting subject. There are many people who claim to be Jesus these days. On a website, a Wikipedia website. I want to know what AJ thinks of Brian Leonard Golightly Marshall. This man has been to Papua New Guinea and Fiji and set up clinics curing people of hepatitis, AIDS, HIV, malaria. And if you don't believe those infections are curable, I suggest you go to the YouTube video says leaked.
I think we've got enough on our hands here without having to get onto the internet. So what are you asking, AJ? Exactly, Jay. Do you think the other guy is Jesus, or are you just?
The other, in my opinion, the other guy has proved himself to be more of Jesus than AJ Miller. As I say, this guy has been deported from Papua New Guinea and Fiji for curing people. He served the Queen. With
as I say, let's just address the question. I think it's fair to say there are plenty of people who claim to be Jesus. What makes you any different from them, do you think?
Well, all through the last 2,000 years, there's been literally millions of people who have claimed to be me, and many of them have different spiritual influences from other spirits who exist in the spirit world, who influence them to do different things on earth. But that doesn't make them me. I know who I am, and so I feel that sooner or later, I think the only way you could really answer the question is to meet some of my friends eventually when you arrive in the spirit world who lived with me in the first century, and they can verify who I am. Aside from that, I don't think you could really verify by the works of a person.
Well, except that Jesus did verify his identity to Thomas, didn't he?
Only after I passed into the spirit world did I verify my identity to Thomas, yeah.
But we're still after that point now.
Well, that was when I was a spirit, whereas I'm no longer a spirit. I'm now back on earth again, so it's impossible for me to verify in the same manner that I did with Thomas.
Although a miracle would help.
Well, miracles can be done, but firstly I have to perform the miracles on myself. In other words, I have to heal myself, and then once I get into a condition where I'm at one with God, then I'm able to perform miracles with others, but only at, under God's influence, if you like. So and I expect that will happen sometime in the future.
It hasn't happened yet.
No, and in the first century it didn't happen for 31 years either. So for 31 years I didn't perform miracles in the first century, even though I taught from the age of 25.
How old are you now, AJ?
I'm now 50.
So you're nearly 20 years behind first century schedule.
No, yes, I wouldn't call it a schedule. I feel quite strongly what we decided to do this time was to have a life. I missed out on a number of things that Mary engaged in the first century that I didn't get to experience in the first century.
Well, like what? What sort of stuff do you mean?
Well, Mary had a number of children in the first century. Even our own child was born after my death in the first century, but this...
that will offend a lot of Christians, won't it? The idea, A, that Jesus wasn't celibate, B, I mean, it's a little bit Dan Brown, the notion that there's a secret child.
Yeah, well, our point isn't to offend Christians, but rather to tell the truth about our life. Like, it is the truth about our life, and there's not much we can do about how other people feel about that,
No, and there's not much you can do to prove it until people are dead and get to meet all the saints in heaven.
And perhaps I could add there that The main brunt of what we're doing on Earth here is not actually to prove who we are to others. We're actually not that invested in people believing who we are. We speak about it because it's the truth of who we are, and obviously some people find that interesting and often contentious. But we are actually here because we would like to share the truths that we've experienced in our life on Earth and in the spirit world about God, and about how each of us can grow in love and make the world a better place. So that's really what we spend most of our time speaking to others about.
What brought you to Britain?
We were invited by ITV to give an interview, and initially they planned to do it in Australia, but I think the costs of that grew out of proportion to their budget, and so they decided to fly us
If
here.
Mohammed won't come to the mountain, then the mountain must. That's not offensive to you in any way.
No, nothing offends me, actually, James.
Good. So they flew you to Britain rather than flying the crew to Australia.
Well, it was more that I think the studio costs in Australia were higher than probably a flight, but. So we finished up doing a seminar while we were here. As you know, you've travelled to Australia, I think you said earlier. So, a bit of jet lag happens in between generally.
Of course it does. You get jet lag, do you?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's a bore.
Hey?
That's a bore.
Yeah, we just have a sleep and get over it.
Victoria is in Southall. Victoria, what would you like to say?
Oh, first of all, thanks to Jesus and Mary for coming back to spread God's true message of divine love.
It's our pleasure.
And my question is about spirit guides.
Are you Australian as well, Victoria?
No, everyone says that. I'm actually English, half Spanish.
Carry on. I was just intrigued. It was almost beginning to sound like the chosen people.
Well, I think you can understand why Jesus would come back to Australia rather than the Middle East.
Well, I don't know. I think they might need him more in the Middle East. But we digress ever so slightly.
Yeah,
what is the question you would like to ask?
The question is about spirit guides. Does God allocate spirit guides, or do they themselves choose the people they work with?
Oh, good question.
Well, God actually allocates a spirit guide, but there are also other spirits who often try to impose themselves on a person as their guide. So sometimes people have with them quite a lot of spirits around them, and some of those spirits claim to be their guide when they're not actually their guide. Whereas there is a guide that is actually assigned by God directly, that then takes the role.
But of course, God is always acting in harmony with the individual's free will. So even though God assigns the guide to a person, the guide also wants to be the guide of the person on Earth at the same time.
And does everybody have a guide?
Yes. So everyone has a guide. Everyone also has a guardian as well.
Okay. A couple of emails to look at as well. Did you look similar to how you did the first time round? Johnny in Harrow wants to know.
Yes, I probably looked a bit similar. I was taller in the first century than I am now.
You haven't got a beard? Well, you've sort of got a bit of designer stubble.
Well, yeah, I shave once a week. So.
Okay. How often did you shave in the first century? Do you remember?
Well, I occasionally shaved, particularly if Mary wanted me to.
Okay. And I mean, presumably it would be easy to trip you up, would it, by asking how you shaved in the first century?
With a knife.
What sort of knife?
A sharp one.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, the sort of technological, historical accuracy is presumably, you can remember some things very clearly, but not others. You wouldn't really be able to make... I mean, how's your carpentry?
My carpentry now is quite good, actually.
Well, and it was always good, was it?
Yes.
So you could... I don't know, build a small building from scratch?
Yes, and I'm currently building some things at home at the moment. So,
and do you think that's an inherited memory or just a more modern?
No, I feel as you become more relaxed with your body, you can do many things that you probably couldn't have done before then. So I think that's an average person normally people would experience.
You said nothing could offend you, so I'll read you this email from Tony. James, please don't give this guy an easy ride. He's on a recruitment drive in the UK. Many gullible and desperate people may be persuaded into following him, after which they will lose their money, their spouses, and their sanity. He then refers to several YouTube videos which allegedly demonstrate how you operate. This guy is a dangerous cult leader who is developing his following, and most worryingly, a compound in Australia for his disciples. The latest Mary is just the latest of a long line. Please don't give this guy credence and endanger the vulnerable.
I could just about...
Well, almost everything he said was false, but...
Yeah.
Which bits weren't?
Well, I'm claiming to be Jesus, that's true.
There hasn't been a long line of Marys before me.
Short line?
No.
There was one other woman that AJ felt may have
That
been
I
me.
thought maybe, and I never lived with her. So
Okay. What convinced you she wasn't?
I went through some emotions that triggered further memories that I had about my life in the first century and in the spirit world, and then I realised that her character and nature was not the same as my Mary.
But you do have followers, as it were,
No,
in
we
Australia.
don't.
You don't. There's
No.
people who've moved to Australia to be near you that I've read about.
Well, yeah, they've done so on their own accord. We don't see them. We're most often travelling, so we don't actually see them very frequently at all. We do occasional seminars in Australia, maybe twice a year. We've done 2 in the last year, and so we see some of them then.
Okay. Right, well, hang on. We're going to have to go to the news, but we'll come back. That's all right with you. There's plenty of people who are still keen to talk to you, myself included. The time is approaching 11:30 now. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC 97.3. Don't forget you can email james@lbc.co.uk or text your question or your point to 84850. I'm on Twitter as well, at Mr. James OB. Are you on Twitter, AJ?
No.
No. Why not?
Because it takes our time away from what we would like to be doing.
It's a modern way of ministering to the masses.
True, but it also has its problems, I feel, because you can't really have that personal interaction with people.
Okay, well, if you tweet me, I'll pass it on to AJ. At Mr. James OB is the handle that you need. Time now, 11:30. Eleanor Noakes is here with the headlines.
The Met Police is failing to deal with race complaints effectively, according to the police watchdog. Their report found many complaints were dismissed without proper investigation. Assistant Met Police Commissioner Simon Byrne says the force is determined to be less defensive and is making changes. London Mayor Boris Johnson says the impact of a third runway at Heathrow would be disastrous for West London. Heathrow has revealed this morning its plans for expansion. Thames Water says it's seen a 15% rise in demand for tap water. It says the Met Office is warning of heatwave conditions for London and has issued a level 3 hot weather warning. The number of people out of work in London has dropped by 16,000 in the last 3 months. The jobless total now stands at 368,000. Unemployment has also fallen nationally to 2.51 million. London's travel on the trains First Capital Connect and East Midlands trains have delays of up to 90 minutes between St Pancras and Bedford. That's because of problems on the line. London's weather dry, hot and sunny with just the chance of the odd shower later. Highs of 30 degrees. Currently at the Gherkin it's 26 degrees. LBC 97.3 it's 11:31.
LBC 97.3.
New Best Ever Special K is a beautiful combination of ingredients. A gorgeous blend of 3 grains. Delicious whole grain. Notes of wholesome fibre. Which together create a taste that's as good as it sounds. New Special K. A change for the better.
Final boarding call for flight 23 to Alicante.
Oh, that's ours, Ken. We should get a move on.
We've got ages yet.
Dad, they said final boarding call.
They just do that to panic you. Garçon, another wine, please.
There's always one. And he's probably the same one who'll miss out on 3 months free TV, totally unlimited broadband and landline calls from TalkTalk with £9.50 value line rental. It's our big free promotion, but it ends on Wednesday, July the 24th. Don't miss it. Join or upgrade today at talktalk.co.uk. A brighter home for everyone. Contract compatible aerial and line speed required. Price after promotion $15.50 a month.
People watching over breakfast in the bustling piazza. Discovering that hidden bar where the locals hang out. Swimming in the rooftop pool by moonlight. Make lasting memories of Europe's cities. Fly British Airways from London Gatwick from £39 one way with our hand baggage only option. Book at ba.com/Gatwick. British Airways. To fly, to serve. Limited availability. Booking fee may apply. Travel in September and October. See ba.com/Gatwick for conditions.
LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 11:33. This is LBC 97.3, and slightly out of the ordinary studio guests today. Alan John Miller believes that he is Jesus, and his partner Mary Luck believes that she is Mary Magdalene. The souls have been sustained over the 2 millennia since they were last upon earth. Actually, is that right, or have you been back at any other times?
No, this is the first time we've returned.
This is the first time, apart from the resurrection.
Yeah, it was impossible for us to return this way without going through the things we went through over the last 2,000 years. So.
Okay. Let's go back to the calls. They are mounting up. Ian is in Watford. Ian, what would you like to say?
Question is, does he consider himself still Jewish?
Why do you want to know, Ian?
Well, because the Christian religion was started after Jesus, and whether he started it or whether he wanted somebody else to start it, or whether he was happy with the Jewish religion, even though it may have been misused by people, where he stood on that.
And will your opinion of Alan change according to his answer?
It would just be very interesting to hear where he stands.
Yeah, it would.
Yes, in the first century I was Jewish. I don't consider myself to be Jewish now. Obviously I've had two nationalities on earth now, Australian and Jewish. But in terms of my opinions in the first century about the Jewish religion, I felt it had its faults as well as it had some truth. And I never really wanted to start a new religion. That was done many years after I died, and many years after, in fact, Mary died as well. And so we didn't really want people to engage in religion so much as engage a personal relationship with God. So that was our primary focus while we were living on earth in the first century, and that's also our primary focus now.
Does that help, Ian?
It's interesting. I mean, so he's not in favour of any orthodoxy of any religion as such.
Correct.
It's an interesting point.
Thank you, Ian. Charles in Bloomsbury. Charles, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm very interested in this idea that they claim to be Jesus and Mary. I think they need to distinguish, first off, we need to distinguish between their believing that and their saying that they believe this. And I wanted to ask AJ in particular, has he considered that he might be mistaken about his sincerely held belief, if we assume that he's not lying about it, that he is Jesus, in the same way that he was mistaken about Mary's predecessor being Mary and he saw the error of his ways? Could he not be mistaken about being Jesus?
Of course, that's something that I very seriously considered. Obviously, we receive a lot of attack and abuse over the years for this claim. And so before I finished up making the claim in public, I felt I had to be very, very certain of all the memories that I was having and all the experiences that I was having emotionally and all of the information that I know came from the fact that I was Jesus and not some kind of supposition or some other source. And so I went through lots and lots of emotions and other things to try to determine the truth of all of that, and came to the conclusion in the end that I was forced to come to through my relationship with God. So I found that I could not to continue my relationship with God properly. In other words, I could not receive God's love while I believed I was not Jesus. So in the end, I felt quite forced in the end by the experience with God to accept my own identity. And once that occurred, of course, more memories easily flowed, and so I could pretty much remember everything then. And so now I would say that I know I am. I understand that other people would not necessarily agree with that, but that's okay. They're allowed to have their opinion, but I know who I am.
What do you think, Shah? I mean, you gave AJ a selection of choices. Which one of those would you have
I really
selected?
wanted to interrupt there. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Well, he, by his own admission, he wanted to reach certainty, and I wanted to ask him whether he's 100% certain, i.e. whether he is undoubtedly correct in his view now. And
Yes, there are certain things that I'm very certain about now, and then there's other things that I realise are just my own opinion. So
okay, good. Yeah. So then you have a problem, because the fact that you claim to be 100% certain about something doesn't make you right.
I agree.
The truth doesn't depend upon your will to believe or your want to believe or your very strong desire to believe.
Yeah, I have no desire to believe. I had no desire at all to believe.
That you're Jesus.
No, not at all.
The fact that you have a conviction and you're conveying this conviction that you claim to be Jesus doesn't make it true. And so you have you have to put that against the other possibility that you could be self-deluded or self-deceived.
I think you're assuming that we haven't considered those possibilities.
I'm assuming that you should consider that you may be self-deluded or self-deceived, because that's more probable.
Yes.
Because you have many facts about things, not just spiritual facts. You have beliefs. You have beliefs about jet lag, right? That doesn't depend upon being in touch with one's spirituality. In the same way that you have beliefs about jet lag, you must also have beliefs about psychology and the probability and possibility that you could be self-deluded. So have you properly considered, you may have wanted to have therapy, for example, you could be self-deluded in the same way that many people who claim with great conviction to have been Jesus before you are deluded in that, and even may come to believe that they were mistaken. It doesn't matter how convinced you are. That isn't a basis for our taking what you're claiming to be true. In fact, it's highly improbable that you are who you claim to be. And until you not necessarily accept that you're mistaken, but accept that the probability of your belief in your being Jesus is far greater than your self-conviction and your sincere belief that you are.
Well, what you state is exactly what I went through for the 40 years prior. It took me 40 years to resolve all those questions that you have just asked me.
I think Charles suggesting you never can resolve them, aren't you, Charles?
I think that in order to have a well-grounded belief, even beliefs about oneself are really no different to beliefs about the world. And you can be as mistaken about yourself. The fact that you have privileged access to belief about yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be deeply mistaken about them. The problem here is that outsiders have more difficulty in actually scrutinizing his belief because of sphere, so to speak. And I think that he hasn't considered sufficiently that he could be deeply mistaken about his sincerely held beliefs about himself.
He says he spent 40 years considering
That's not good enough.
No. What's your belief at this point? I don't think I'm going out on a limb when I suggest you don't believe that AJ is Jesus, but do you believe he's deluded or that he is deceptive?
I think he's sincere, but I think that he is deluded.
So you think he really does believe he's Jesus?
I think he's unquestionably deluded because I think it's highly improbable that he is Jesus, and I think the improbability far outweighs the possibility from an outsider's point of view that he is deluded. And I think also, somebody criticised your programme for giving him credence. I don't think that's quite true, and you're particularly good at scrutinising him, but I think you should qualify when you announce him as believing that he's Jesus. You should say he says he believes he's Jesus. That's uncontroversial. But to say that he believes he's Jesus, I think that awaits, further cross-examination by a therapy or
everyone's a critic, Shah. Okay, AJ, who says that he believes that he's Jesus, you can't really claim to have logic on your side, can you?
Well, if anybody listens to my 1,000 hours of YouTube teachings, they'll find that I'm a very logical person.
Well, I should plug my Mystery Hour podcasts at this point as well, which are available on iTunes. I'm in the top 20, are you?
No.
Oh, I'll give you a few pointers after the show. Rudy is in Westminster. Rudy, what would you like to say?
James, good afternoon. James, fantastic result for LBC, first of all. Brilliant reward this year for you as the best programme.
Oh, best station. I wasn't individually honoured, but we're not bitter.
No, I know, best station. I just have a problem with this because coming from a point of view, and I don't want to sound too... these two people, I'd like him to answer, if you're a non-believer, and I know you're Catholic, yes?
I was educated as a Catholic.
Educated, yeah. If I'm a non-believer and I'm a Big Bang theorist, somebody that comes from the point of view that we were a combination of gases at a certain time and all the rest of it, I won't go into all that.
Well, just evolution. We'll just talk about
evolution. Where does he come from?
Where do you stand on evolution, AJ?
Well, mankind were, in terms of when they were first arrived on the planet, there are a first human couple that I've spoken to when I got into the spirit world, and their names were Ammon and Aman, and they don't remember anyone else before them. They had no parents. They arrived on Earth over.
So this would be Adam and Eve to all intents and purposes.
Yes, but they arrived on Earth over almost 200,000 years ago. And since then, man devolved into a fairly poor creature based on the amount of love that man reflected at the time. And then since, over the last 5,000 or 6,000 years, man has evolved from the bottom of that terrible condition into...
But was it still a human being at the bottom of the terrible condition?
Yes, he was.
That sort of flies in the face of archaeological evidence, doesn't it, and the sort of ascent of man?
Well, no, he was still a human being in the sense of a human soul, but his body was very small, less than 4 foot high at that the point of 100,000 years ago or so. And were very undeveloped intellectually.
So what were the sort of corporeal reality then of the original humans, the two people you refer to as the first ones? Were they, because you described something that sounds a little like an Oompa Loompa out of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and that's certainly not a biblical interpretation.
No, I agree. It's not.
What did they look like? What did the first humans look like? Were they?
They looked better than any person I've ever seen on Earth.
So they were amazing looking.
Yeah,
and then
they
we
were
went
amazing.
into a sort of physical reverse.
Yes, because of the choices they made that were out of harmony with love, the world became more and more violent, and the choices made were more based around fear. And as the fear became expressed, it affected the next generation, and each generation slowly degraded.
So you reject Charles Darwin, all traditional theories of evolution?
I don't reject some of his theories. No, some of his theories are actually true, I feel. But and in terms of
the central theory that man began in an entirely physically unrecognisable state to the one he inhabits today, and through millions of years of natural selection, we developed the bodies that we have now.
Well, it depends what you view as man. See, I don't view the physical body as man.
No, well, Darwin does, and we're talking about him.
I agree. So it's very likely that the physical body did evolve in the way Darwin maybe suggested, but we don't really know at this point. All we know in talking to the people who have existed in the past is that at one point in time they incarnated into bodies that were freshly existing.
So the problem you've got, Rudy, is your rejection of the spiritual sphere, you see, isn't it? So as long as you've got the spiritual sphere operating in parallel to the physical reality, it doesn't matter what you use to explain the physical reality, because the spirits can hop in and out of these bodies whenever they please.
If he's going around the world now and seeing all these people wherever else, I would suggest that he tries to perform one of these miracles and goes to Brazil or to the rainforest and stops them cutting down the rainforest.
Well, you could start with the ashes.
I could stop. No, well, yeah, but stop what's going on in the world that's going to change our climate to such a degree, and people are forgetting that, because I was big into Professor Lovelock, who was a guy from Devon, I think, Cornwall, reading his books about how that theory came about, and someone needs to stop that kind of operation. I don't know how they do it, but in all those countries, and it will change our climate forever.
I mean, to be fair, we've addressed the question of why no miracles have been performed, and you just simply add the word "yet" to that.
Can I have an answer?
Of course.
Because it's important. Your world is going to collapse again very shortly if you don't go and address those rainforests, and the forestry. Never mind car pollution.
Okay.
Well, I feel firstly that it's impossible for a person who loves another to force another person to make choices and decisions that they don't want to make. So it's impossible for me to force anybody in the world to make a different choice. All I can do is reason with them about making a different choice.
So you don't have any earthly powers?
No, and I don't have any desire to exercise any.
Really?
No, not at all. Why would you if you loved other people and they've been given the gift of free will?
You make the world better for them.
No, you can't do something for somebody. They have to do it for themselves. And this is something that God has been waiting for all this time, is for us to decide, humanity to decide, to do something for ourselves in order to love each other, rather than wait for some kind of saviour to come along and save us.
Mary?
Yeah, I was just going to add sentiments along the lines of what AJ mentioned, that one of the most beautiful things that God has given to us is our will, and God is constantly trying to assist us to learn how to use that will in harmony with love. And that's really what we love to talk to people about, how they can do that, why they are already making choices that are out of harmony with love, how they can heal themselves in order to make more loving choices with God's assistance. And that's actually the answer to the issues in the rainforest, we believe.
Okay. Rudy, thank you. It's 11:47. Andy McCall is in the LBC 97.3 Travel Centre.
I'm still watching problems, James, on the trains. First Capital Connect and East Midlands. Disruption up to 90 minutes now between St Pancras and Bedford. The emergency services working the line at Flitwick. Now, 2 of the 4 lines are open again, but we're still looking at some pretty horrendous delays there. Bear in mind, if you're going out to catch a train or the tube this lunchtime, take a bottle of water with you, because temperatures continue to swelter and rise. Bakerloo line, still no service at Stonebridge Park to Harrow and Wilson. There's signal problems to blame at Kenton. Watching delays delays on the M25 anti-clockwise, 26 and 25. That's Waltham Abbey towards the A10. The inside lane blocked just before the Homestead Tunnel after an accident. It was lane 3 that was blocked earlier on, but now it's the inside lane. Queues also for the clockwise M25 up and over the QE2 bridge from Essex to Kent, and anti-clockwise from junction 1B in towards the Dartford Tunnel tolls. And queues around Haringey on Green Lane, so the roadworks continuing at Hermitage Road. Hadley Wood, we had reports earlier of delays on the A111, Cockfosters Road in both directions, with roadworks at Ferny Hill. And still the issues in Victoria. Buckingham Palace Road remains closed between Bressenden Place and Victoria Street. Keep another moving. Next travel update is in half an hour.
This is LBC 97.3.
If you've suffered any form of medical negligence, you should talk to the firm with years of experience and some really understanding people. Fletcher's Solicitors. You won't be going through this alone. Call 0333 9201 708 or visit fletchersolicitors.co.uk.
If you've suffered a sports injury, urgent care is essential, as Professor Faris Haddad explains.
If you suffer a sports injury, you need a quick, clear and accurate diagnosis. At the Princess Grace Urgent Care Centre, we open the door to the Institute of Sport, Exercise and Health and to a variety of other specialists who can diagnose, deal with your problem and help you get back to sport as quickly as possible.
Untreated sports injuries can cause complications, so get treated today at the Princess Grace Urgent Care Centre. Search online for Urgent Care Centre.
Hi, I'm Steve from Waitrose.com, and I'd like to give you £5 off your first online grocery shop with us.
I'm Joe, and I'll give you £10 off your second.
Tim here. I'm chipping in with £15 off your third, £20 off your fourth, and even a full £25 off your fifth.
Hi, I'm Claire, and that's not all. We won't even charge you for delivery.
Go to Waitrose.com to get a full £75 off your first 5 online shops. Minimum order per shop £75. New customers and selected postcodes only. See website for conditions.
Discover the mouth-watering Moroccan dishes of couscous, zalouk and tagine badawi. Enjoy a traditional Moroccan dining experience with live folk music and belly dancing. For a culinary adventure you'll never forget, visit Sidi Marouf Edgware Road, where spicy aromas fill the air. Sidi Marouf, the authentic Moroccan restaurant in London. To find out more, visit eatmoroccan.com.
LBC 97.3. This is London's biggest conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 11:50. It's LBC 97.3. I don't know if this text is serious or not. It's from Burn in Manchester. AJ says, I remember being a market trader in Jerusalem called Irving 2,000 years ago. Jesus owed me 5 sestertii. With interest, that comes to £678,800,000. I am happy to discuss an instalment plan. What do you live on?
We do everything we do for free, but we live off of donations that we receive from people who feel happy with the things that we teach. So.
Okay. And that question earlier on about followers and you not having any, but there are people that have moved to Australia to be near you. What's the difference between them and a follower then?
Well, I don't.
Jesus quite liked followers.
I know it's portrayed like that, but that's not how it was in the first century either. Myself and Mary went around visiting groups of people because we were invited to, the same way as we do now. And generally, at the end, people decided to follow us because they wanted to hear what was being said. And I suppose many of the people we don't really know why they moved to near us, because the reality is we're home very rarely.
When we are home, we're usually resting and having private time.
Are they quite fragile characters, do you think? Or
no, not at all. No.
You don't know why they've done quite a big thing. You don't know why they've done it, even with your powers of insight.
I think sometimes people are just, they actually want to do something positive and constructive with their lives. And we don't actually encourage people to do anything other than what they want to do. And we don't actually offer anything locally in the area very much, apart from doing the occasional free seminar. But I think sometimes people just feel that they want to do something. Sometimes that's in a loving thing to do. Sometimes it's because they want to avoid where they're at. But as I said, their decisions actually don't have anything to do with what we've encouraged them to do. And most of these people, we don't know.
Okay. And again, with the context of your historical memories, do you remember language? A lot of people are keen to know whether you can speak Aramaic or Hebrew or whatever the sort of Latin, I suppose, was around at the time as well.
Yeah, at the moment, as I've said, I'm still developing connection with my own soul, and there is.
But that's
still
not a
doing the
memory,
same.
is it? I mean, you could learn Aramaic now. You're 50. I mean, you'd have had 50 years to learn it. You presumably, if it was a memory, you should have been able to speak it pretty much from the get-go.
Well, I have a memory of being able to speak every language of the earth, but I can't speak every language of the earth now. So,
now, how do you know you've got a memory of speaking every language of the earth if you don't have the facility to recognise every language of
because
the earth?
I remember the conversations that I had with people in terms of the thoughts.
In English?
In terms of in English now, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't speak any contemporaneous languages?
No. But I expect at some point in the future I will.
Well, anyone can say that, can't they?
Yeah, they can.
Yeah. Not even Latin.
And, the condescension, though, that we get quite frequently.
It's not condescension, it's scepticism. There's a crucial distinction to be drawn.
Yeah, but the way I see it is that...
If I told you I used to be able to speak loads of languages, but I can't now, you'd be sceptical. It doesn't mean you're being condescending.
No, I'd ask you questions about it. I wouldn't just make assumptions about it. So, with the way I analyse what people say to me is that I always ask them lots of questions, but I don't have an attitude towards them of scepticism before I ask the questions. I just ask the questions in an open-minded manner.
Yes, of course. And if the answer is hard to credit, then you naturally feel scepticism.
Well, no.
If I told you I used to be an elephant, you'd be sceptical.
Well, the way I work with everything is that I sort of think, well, unless I know for certain something is true or not, then I've got to keep an open mind. So that's the way I look at it.
I know for certain I never was an elephant.
And I know for certain I never was either.
Do you?
Yes.
How do you know that for certain?
Well, the way I know how God creates human souls, and so, yeah.
Okay. Neil's in Kingston. Neil, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Hi, OJ. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
It's AJ, not
hi.
OJ. That's a whole different controversy.
I agree with the philosophy, and that can be applied to spirituality or any religion. But my main question is, why have you chosen at this point in time to come back? What, in addition, have you got to say, or what reason? Why wasn't it before World War II, for instance?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for the reason why. Firstly, we did not get in the condition ourselves in the spirit world, in what you'd call heaven, to come back the way we wanted to come back. So it took us until nearly 1935, in fact, to get to the condition in the spirit world where we could actually come back. And then we decided to wait for a number of other people to get into the same condition until there were 7 of us, 7 groups or 14 people, you could think of them as, who were in the same condition. And then we decided to make a plan to come back.
So, have you met them yet?
I've met the majority of them except for 2 of them, yes.
Where do you think the other 2 may be?
One will probably be in South Africa, and the other one will probably be in somewhere in the Pacific, I think. But
and whose souls are inside them?
They're all people that we knew in the first century. So
people that were recorded in the Bible, companions, apostles? Or?
Somewhere. For example, the Apostle John and his male soulmate, they were 2 of them. There were also others that were not mentioned in the Bible at all. So there are a lot of people who have progressed in the spirit world.
That's John the Apostle, not John the Baptist.
John the Apostle. John the Baptist is also one of them as well.
He's still around, is he?
Yes.
Where's he?
He's come back as well in the same way we have.
Where is he at the moment? Do we know?
I'd probably not like to talk about them.
Okay.
Because it puts pressure on them. And I don't like putting pressure on people unless they want the pressure. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. You haven't picked up on anything from me during this meeting?
No.
Really?
In terms of?
Well, I don't know. I mean, James is quite a biblical name. I don't know where I've been for the last 2,000 years.
No, we're pretty certain of people who have come back with us. We know their identity.
Tim's in Fulham. Tim, what would you like to say?
Hi there. I just wanted to talk briefly about St. Mark's Gospel. Now, I think I'm right in saying that was the first Gospel that was written, and it was written, I think, between 40 and 50 AD or thereabouts. And since before that, every single atom of its content was passed down by word. Presumably, quite a lot of what is contained in St. Mark is inaccurate.
Correct.
And I'm just interested, since by the way, it hasn't come across, but you're supposed to be omniscient, how you think current St. Mark's Gospel compares with your knowledge of the subject.
Sure. With St. Mark is really John. Well, I know him as John Mark. He was a young man when I died. He was around 17 years of age when I died. And so he then recollected he wasn't a literate man at the time I died, so he must have learned how to write after I passed, because I certainly didn't see him writing when I was alive. And he had a personal experience, obviously, with us, and so therefore he recorded it later in his life. But as you say, it got passed down verbally, and therefore changed quite frequently until it was changed even right up to 300 years later, unfortunately, and modified by different copyists. And this is the problem with many of the books of the Bible, is they have been modified over a slow period of time through the copyist process, and through different people's belief systems being imposed upon
also,
the book.
I mean, it wasn't translated into a language you understand until the 17th century, was it?
That's correct. There's also translating issues, obviously, once it's translated. But the issues with most of these gospel accounts is that while some of them were written by friends of ours in the first century, many of them were, like you say, transmitted by word of mouth or copied by people who had religious dogmas from other types of religious faith that they tried to impose upon the copies. And this is how Christianity, as it's known today, was formed.
Does that put your mind at rest, Tim?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. Well, you haven't answered the question at all. You're omniscient, so you must be able to compare actually what is related in St. Mark's Gospel, or John Mark's Gospel, with the reality. You're omniscient. I noticed also that your knowledge of... No, you can't. Your knowledge of evolution, you're questioning yourself all the time. You don't know very much about it, but you're omniscient. I don't understand this difference.
We haven't actually said that we're omniscient.
And we don't claim to be.
You don't?
No.
No.
Okay, so what does it say in the Bible about you, your knowledge level?
Well, it says that God is omniscient. And as it is quoted in the Bible, me saying that I don't know everything that God knows, and I never will, actually, because God's an infinite being who is our creator.
So you don't have the genetic advantages of God?
No, definitely not. I am just a human, the same as you are. I'm your brother, and we can be friends or whatever you decide to be. But in the end of the day, no. Jesus in the first century, me in the first century, was never and has never claimed to be omniscient.
Just to thank you, Tim. We're out of time. Just to raise a lot of points that have come in, because people, they can see you, but not perhaps closely enough. There's no stigmata at all.
Well, I'm in a different body than I had in the first century, and the stigmata that I displayed to Thomas was not actually the same body that I had when I died.
Yes, no stigmata, no miracles, no ability to understand contemporaneous languages, no proof whatsoever. But that's where faith comes in.
No, I'm not asking people to develop faith either.
I was thinking more of you.
No. What I'm suggesting to people is that they develop their relationship with God, and they'll get answers to all of these questions just like I do.
AJ, Mary, many thanks indeed for your time. Safe journey back to Australia. When are you setting sail? Or
Friday morning.
Bon voyage. It's 1 minute after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC 97.3.
On FM, online and digital radio, London's biggest conversation.